Welcome back. Today's explainer is a truly fascinating deep dive into the clinical and educational frameworks surrounding cognitive delays, and honestly, the profound mysteries of human potential. We're going to look directly at how educational science categorizes the origins of cognitive challenges, how it structures specialized learning, and then we'll pivot to a completely different kind of educational mystery: the student who absolutely has the innate ability but consistently misses the mark. Okay, let's dive into this and unpack the frameworks presented in our source material.
Here's our structured field guide for today. 1. The roots of cognitive challenges. 2. The principles of special learning. 3. Tailored programs by category. And 4. The underachiever gap. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. Roots of cognitive challenges. Understanding a learner's journey really has to start right at the beginning. To effectively educate, the clinical framework insists we first categorize the root origins of mental retardation. The source material breaks these causes down into 4 distinct chronological buckets. It's basically a developmental timeline. First up, we have genetic factors, so things like chromosomal abnormalities or defective genes that are present before conception even happens. Then, we move to the intrauterine environment. Here, factors like severe maternal illness, chronic infections, or malnutrition during pregnancy can significantly impact development. Third, there are delivery factors, specifically mechanical head injuries that a child might unfortunately receive during birth. And finally, postnatal factors. Now, this is a massive bucket. It encompasses everything from childhood infections and accidents to severe emotional conflicts and notably sociocultural and educational deprivation. So as we can see, everything from prenatal maternal distress all the way to postnatal educational deprivation sets the initial course for a child's development.
Section 2. Principles of special learning. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the educational system actually responds once we've mapped those origins. According to the source material, the very first step in addressing these cognitive delays is identification and segregation. The framework dictates directing these children to special schools that operate under a set of universal ground rules. Once a student is identified, the foundational blueprint for their curriculum is actively adjusted to meet their specific individual needs. The learning tasks, they must be brief and strictly uncomplicated. They also have to be presented sequentially, meaning the learner proceeds in a sequence of very small steps where every single step builds directly on the previously learned task. It's a real building block approach. Furthermore, abstract theory is pretty much tossed out the window. Learning tasks must be applied directly to objects, problems, and situations in the learner's actual real-life environment. And crucially, step 4, overlearning has to be built into the lessons. But beyond just the academics, the source emphasizes that these environments focus heavily on emotional and social adjustment. The primary goal is really to instill moral virtues and desirable personal habits above all else.
Section 3. Tailored programs by category.
So within these special schools, it is definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach. Training is dictated by a strict taxonomy. Children are grouped specifically based on the degree of severity of their retardation. We're looking at 3 distinct tiers of capability: EMR, TMR, and CMR. Each acronym represents a highly specific tier and dictates an entirely different educational path. Let's look closely at what a day in the life of these specific programs actually entails, starting with the highest functioning group.
For the Educable Mentally Retarded, or EMR program, formal education absolutely still happens, but the timeline is intentionally shifted. Schooling is generally delayed by about 2 to 3 years. In those early years, the focus is highly practical. We're talking simple arithmetical concepts, understanding their community, and building good work habits. Formal reading and writing instruction, that doesn't even kick in until age 9 or 10. The guiding philosophy across both curricular and co-curricular activities here is a heavy prioritization of concrete experience over abstract concepts.
Moving to the TMR, or Trainable Mentally Retarded category, we see a really stark shift. There is zero formal education here. It's exclusively about training. The curriculum pivots entirely away from formal reading and writing to absolutely crucial self-managing life skills. We're talking about independent eating, dressing, washing, and brushing teeth. Academics are limited strictly to survival recognition, like identifying common signs or basic coins. Beyond that, the day is filled with learning unskilled occupational jobs and vital household tasks. Things like sweeping, operating a radio or television, and safely conducting limited travel in familiar local areas.
Finally, we reach the CMR, or Custodial Mentally Retarded Program. As the name implies, the educational program here is intensively focused on basic survival and custodial care. The curriculum is stripped right down to the absolute essentials of human self-management: feeding, toilet training, washing, and dressing. And a massive, vital component of this curriculum is hazard avoidance.
These learners must be actively taught how to protect themselves from severe weather, health hazards, harmful insects, animals, and fire.
And this brilliantly illustrates the vast spectrum of cognitive challenges outlined in the text. On one side, you have delayed but formal reading and math. On the other, the curriculum is literally how to use a towel and how to avoid a fire. This stark contrast reinforces exactly why this clinical framework argues that segregation and highly specific, tailored programs are absolutely necessary for the safety and development of these distinct groups of learners.
Section 4. The underachiever gap.
Let's move to our final section and see how this builds into something completely different. We're going to shift our narrative paradigm right now. We've spent our time so far looking at learners who face limitations in their cognitive potential. But what happens when we look at an educational gap that has absolutely nothing to do with a lack of innate intelligence? It's a fascinating question, isn't it? I mean, if a student has all the cognitive tools, all the neurological hardware fully intact, why might they still fail to learn? This brings us to the final and arguably most frustrating educational concept outlined in our source.
Educational science defines this specific type of student as the underachiever. This is a child who is performing consistently below their intellectual potential. The key identifier here is prediction. If intelligence tests predict one highly positive outcome, but the learner's actual real-world achievement turns out to be far poorer than that prediction, well, they're classified as an underachiever. It's an observable, measurable failure to meet the standards set for their specific age or grade level, despite having the innate mental machinery to easily do so.
So the crucial point is that underachievement is fundamentally a paradox. It's the literal physical gap between potential achievement and actual performance. In educational psychology, when a child gets lower grades than their past performance or their apparent ability would lead us to expect, they enter this state. It's simply defined as a state of not working up to one's potential. The cognitive ability is 100% there, but for some reason, the execution is totally missing.
The source wraps up this section by highlighting authorities in the field, like Games, who noted that these subjects achieve academically at a level below what is expected for their ability. But I really love this clean, precise definition by RIM. It boils the whole thing down to a single word: a discrepancy. Whether a student faces severe cognitive delays requiring intensive, tailored special education just to learn to use a towel, or they possess high intelligence but suffer from a mysterious discrepancy that keeps them from succeeding, educational science is ultimately a quest to bridge these gaps. It leaves us with a pretty profound question. Once we've provided the absolute perfect environment, how do we finally unlock a human's will to reach their full potential? Thank you for exploring this fascinating framework with me today. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.